Hello, this is Dave Hurwitz, Executive Editor at ClassicsToday.com, here to talk to you about one of the great works from the second half of the 20th century. Eino Juhani Rautavaara's Cantus Arcticus. What is a Cantus Arcticus, you may ask? It's a concerto for taped bird sounds and orchestra. Now, I know you may think that sounds kind of silly. I mean, ever since Respighi used a nightingale recording in the Pines of Rome, using bird noises is not such a big deal, right? I mean, and it could sound kind of like, something cheap and trashy. But believe me, this is just the opposite. This is one of the most atmospheric and beautiful works that I've ever heard, and I think you're going to agree. It's magnificent. It's about 20 minutes long. It's a genuine concerto in 3 movements. And the tape, which runs along virtually with the entire piece, is a montage of different bird calls and bird communities taped above the Arctic Circle in Finland. And I don't know. The first time I heard it, I thought myself, wow, God, another one of those crappy pieces for tape, that never works. I mean, I can tell you a wonderful story about that, actually. When I was in college, I saw the premiere of a work by a composer named Gene Ivey. It was called Sea Change with the Baltimore Symphony. It was supposed to be a water piece, and and she was running, I think, the electronic music studio at Peabody Conservatory, and this was a big moment in integrating electronic sounds with those of the symphony orchestra. And we get there at the Baltimore Symphony, and the orchestra's there, and there are 4, speakers at least. I think it was quadraphonic, set up in the old Lyric Theater in Baltimore, and everybody's ready, and it's all ready to go. And what do we hear coming out of the speakers? You make me feel like a natural woman. Yes, it was Aretha Franklin. Somehow the speakers were picking up the local radio station and broadcasting it. It was not Gene Ivey's Sea Change. So, of course, there was a bit of a pause while, everything got reset. They tried to figure out how to get rid of Aretha, when we were enjoying tremendously, rather more than I think we were going to enjoy Gene Ivey's Sea Change. And eventually they got it sorted out, and they play the music, and it's this sort of pale, waffly, atonal, drifty thing with bleep, bleep, bloop, bleep, 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 blah, 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 blah. If you've ever had an MRI, it kind of sounded like that, only a little bit less so. I mean, it was just a waste of time. And so many pieces that use tape sounds are a waste of time. Now, there are also wonderful ones. You can't generalize. You have to take each one as it comes and keep on listening. So yes, I agree with that philosophy. However, the reason that Rautavaara's piece works as well as it does, first of all, is that he has truly built up the work around the sounds of the bird calls and the communal bird thingies, the loons and the cranes and the swans and whatever they are. And the point is that the tape sounds are beautifully integrated into the orchestral textures. I don't usually feel that you need to have a score, but you do learn some interesting things by looking at it. And one of the ones that you find here is that he has actually used some aleatoric, which is, sort of chants or non-rhythmic or, features that are also quite wonderful. For example, in the finale, there are 4 different instrumental groups. There are the woodwinds, which expand on and sort of make more musical the bird call noises. And then there's the harp and the celesta, who have their own independent works. And then there's sort of the upper strings, and then the lower strings and brass, and they all have their own music. And the piece is just one giant crescendo in which all of those things combine, but they do it completely harmoniously. and euphoniously. It isn't necessary to use electronic sounds in the service of cacophony and something that gives you a headache and something that just makes noise. They can be, as Rautavaara shows us, magnificently appropriate and entirely necessary to the expression of the music. And that's what he's done. And that's why I think this work is such an achievement. And I've got a couple samples to play for you so you get a sense of it and of what's going on. It has three movements, and the three movements are marked. Let us see. The Bog, and then Melancholy, which is the central slow movement, and finally Swans Migrating. And as I said, he uses the flutes and the clarinets generally throughout the piece to echo and amplify and make musical the bird sounds, which are in themselves inherently musical too. This isn't just noise. There's a pattern to them, and it's quite wonderful. And in fact, the opening flute mark, indication for the two flutes is quite splendid. I'm going to play you some of it. Think of autumn and of Tchaikovsky. That's what he writes in the score, which is just marvelous, isn't it? It's just terrific. Rautavaara was one of those composers who had a sort of serial phase, an academic serial phase, but he later gave it up completely in favor of really his own path and his own sound world, which includes 12-tone elements, but they don't matter. I mean, they don't matter in the sense that he's not making a point of using 12-tone elements. He's writing his own stuff, and whether it's conventionally tonal or 12-tone or aleatoric, like I said, using collage techniques, he does them all, but all integrated into his own voice, and that's what makes him a great composer. It's fascinating and wonderful stuff. And I knew him rather well, by the way, and I'm going to include, I have a photo here of me having lunch with him one day, so you can just see it was a wonderful time, because it was after he'd just recovered from a very, very, very serious heart attack. And I had just recovered from a serious heart attack. We were on the same medication, and we were swapping war stories, as it were. And his lovely wife, Sini, made a beautiful lunch for us, and we were in Helsinki together, and we had a great time and a great conversation about music and other things, bits of which I like to bring up in the course of these videos, and we'll hear some of those. We've already heard a couple, I think, and some going on as well. But in the meantime, I'm going to play you just the opening few 30 seconds or so you can hear how he introduces the bird sounds into the bird sounds of the woodwinds, and so sets the stage for what's to come. So here it is, Cantus Arcticus, just the opening. Now, it's lovely, right? It's just beautiful. It's an atmosphere. It's a mood. It's going to happen, and it's just terrific. I want to talk for a minute about recordings too. There have been quite a few of this work, really, kind of impressively. There are two alone on Ondine, and the musical examples that we're playing come from this recording right here, which features. This is the Naxos recording. No, it doesn't come from this recording. It comes from this recording right here, which features the Helsinki Philharmonic Life Segerstam. And it has three works on it. The Cantus Arcticus, the Clarinet Concerto, which is a fabulous work written for Richard Stoltzman, and the tone poem Garden of Spaces, which is also evocative and just beautiful. And then the other really wonderful recording is this one on Naxos, which features Hannu Lintu and the Royal Scottish National Orchestra with Cantus Arcticus, the first piano concerto with soloist Laura Mikkola, and the third symphony, which is a magnificent work. And actually, one of the few successful pieces written in the spirit of Bruckner. Rautavaara loved Bruckner. He hated Mahler. We used to have little arguments about that topic periodically. But the Third Symphony is one of the very few completely successful evocations of Bruckner's style and ethos and constructive techniques. It's a masterpiece. It's just marvelous. Anyway, so after the slow movement, the melancholy, which is very, very beautiful and evocative, we get to the finale, which I think is one of the most transcendent pieces of music anyone ever wrote. Rautavaara was into that kind of mystical, stuff. Remember his Angels series. He became sort of famous on the international scene very quickly for his Seventh Symphony, Angel of Light, which we'll talk about in a future chat as well. But for the moment, just listen to the wonderful layering of texture that he achieves between the birds and the orchestral strings and the harp and celesta in the finale of Cantus Arcticus, Swans Migrating. It's this recording again with Segerstam on Ondine. It is so, so beautiful here. Listen to this. Great, just great, isn't it? I mean, it's so beautiful, and I hope that this little talk gets you excited about encountering a true masterpiece of 20th century music, and one that takes all of these what we call avant-garde techniques, the random aspects, the textural layering, the electronic tape, and truly synthesizes them into a wonderfully approachable, beautiful, but in its way, completely uncompromising, sincere, honest, and magnificent artistic statement. The Cantus Arcticus of Eino Juhani Rautavaara, a masterpiece that you really have to hear. Thank you, and keep on listening.